Good morning, Judge Schumacher. Why don't you take your seat, get comfortable, and you can begin your opening remarks.
Thank you. So good morning, Justice Wiggins and members of the commission. First, I want to thank both Justice Wiggins and the commission members for welcoming me into their homes and their businesses and their communities over the last several weeks. I truly enjoyed getting to know each of you on an individual basis and getting to explore your communities a little bit. Fortunately, it was nice weather and I brought my walking shoes, so between meetings I explored each community a little bit and was able to take in some sights. So thank you for your dedication to this commission. In traveling across the state these last several weeks, I knew it was important to the commissioners to not only know who I was based on my written application, which I know you've all read, based on the questions I received in my individual interviews, but also to know who I was as a person. For all but my college education, I've lived in Iowa. I grew up in northwest Iowa, Sioux County, Orange City. My dad was a Vietnam veteran and returned from the war and worked at a local phone company. My mom was a nurse and then did daycare for 35 years. So at a very early age, I was able to see what hard work, public service, and dedication looked like. At the time my dad was drafted in the war, my parents had 3 children under the age of 3. All 4 of my sisters and I graduated from Spalding Catholic High School. I went on to attend the University of South Dakota. And at the time, I fully intended to major in graphic design and journalism. It was a college professor my junior year of college that mentioned law school to me and really put my path onto a career in law, a decision I've never regretted. I love everything about the law and the work that I do with it. I still feel after 26 years in this profession, I take away something new every day, so that is a blessing to me. I've been a member of the Iowa Bar for 26 years, practicing in Crawford County for 20 years, and then serving both as a district associate judge and a district court judge for the last 6 years. I consider myself fortunate to be an ordinary Iowan who's been presented with extraordinary opportunities, and it's what I've done with those opportunities I would respectfully submit to this commission qualifies me for nomination to Governor Reynolds' office. I live in a rural community, Schleswig, Iowa, population approximately 1,000, and I have a daughter who grew up in my law office. By the time she was 5, she knew what a trial information was and marked her homework with exhibit stickers. So she's attending college now, pursuing an international studies major. And like many of you as parents on this commission, I consider my opportunity to be her mother my most extraordinary opportunity. I want to speak briefly with you regarding my work for the past 26 years that qualifies me for a seat on the Court of Appeals. While I consider graduating from college and law school extraordinary opportunities, it was really the work that happened when I began practicing in a busy county seat town in Denison that developed opportunities that have led me to appear before you today. When I landed in Crawford County in 1993, I immediately became aware that I had the opportunity to learn from extraordinary mentors. At the time, the chief judge of the district, Judge Vipond, lived in Denison, Iowa, and by all accounts, not just mine, attorneys that appeared in front of him, he was an excellent mentor. He appointed me as a hospitalization referee soon after I started practicing, and I was only 25 years old. To be able to preside over cases that were so impactful to community, it was really invaluable experience to me. I had the same partners for over 18 years in my law firm who were also extraordinary mentors, and I also recognized that members outside of my firm and the Bar Association were extraordinary mentors. At the time I began practicing in 1993, I was the only female member of the Crawford County Bar. But the lawyers outside that bar really welcomed me into the bar, took an opportunity on several occasions to really box my ears back, but also provide extraordinary mentoring. So that was a really valuable experience for me. So it was during the course of those 20 years, I really seized the opportunity to diversify myself on the bench. And because of that, I believe I came to the bench as a district associate judge and a district court judge with a level of trust from both litigants and attorneys that I had really walked in their shoes. I was a defense attorney when I began practicing and handled hundreds of cases, both misdemeanor and felony level. I represented parents in juvenile child in need of assistance proceedings. I was a prosecutor for approximately the last 5 years of my practice, handling felony and misdemeanor cases, both jury trials and bench trials. The entire year of my practice, 20 years, I was a private practitioner and the managing partner of a busy law firm. Over those 20 years, I had thousands of clients from every walk of life. I handled a lot of family law cases, over 500. I specialized in complicated agricultural dissolution and contested custody matters. I was the assistant city attorney for Denison for 18 years. I represented school districts, superintendents, teachers. I handled real estate matters and administrative matters. It was during this time period that my mentor, Judge Vipon, suggested I make application for a judicial position. I was nominated and appointed as a district associate judge in December 2012 and became the lead judge for the Woodbury County Juvenile Court. Woodbury County, surprisingly, is only second to Polk County in the number of juvenile court filings, but at the time I was the only judge handling juvenile work on a full-time basis. And what that equated to was up to some days I was handling 15 evidentiary cases per day. The volume and the number of cases was not my concern. My concern was making sure the litigants that appeared in front of me didn't know I had 15 cases that day. I wanted them to know that I was really listening to them. I've authored hundreds, if not thousands, of juvenile court orders, including termination of parental rights cases. In the role as a district associate judge, I was also in the on-call rotation, which meant on certain days when I was having 15 evidentiary cases during the day, I was on call at night and receive anywhere from 5 to 10 phone calls, usually between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m. during that same time period. And I only tell you that to let you know that I'm used to high volume and fast-paced work. After being appointed by Governor Branstad, I continue to serve as a district court judge in the 3rd Judicial District, which has been certainly one of the most extraordinary opportunities of my life. It's a position I feel is a calling rather than a job. One aspect I really love as part of the district court work is the diversity of that work. On Monday, I'll handle a busy Woodbury County motion day and then begin a week-long civil trial on Tuesday in Plymouth County. And I believe that's the type of diversity I would see in the Court of Appeals. So why ask for your nomination to the Iowa Court of Appeals if I love my job so much as district court judge? I once had a judge tell me that all good judges were really successful lawyers, and that was really impactful to me. Because as I applied for a district associate judge position and a district court position, I knew if I got what I was asking for, I'd be leaving jobs I really loved. And when I was appointed as a district associate judge, a lot of people said to me, "Boy, I bet you don't miss the practice of law." And I did. I still miss the practice of law. I miss that collaborative piece of being in a law firm. I miss the collaborative piece of being part of a local bar. Same thing when I became a district court judge. A lot of people said to me, "I bet you don't miss that juvenile work." And I really do miss that. Fortunately, I'm able to continue in juvenile work, being the backup juvenile judge for Woodbury County. But that's really part of my job that I consider the most important work that I've done. And if I was appointed to the Court of Appeals, I would still consider that some of the most important work that I've ever done. So my practice for 20 years and being on the bench for over 6 years, I have served in roles that I believe are reflective of the people of Iowa. As a private practitioner, my work in criminal law, family law, juvenile law, and civil litigation, I believe, mirrors what comes before the Court of Appeals. Additionally, I bring geographic diversity to the Court of Appeals. I plan on remaining in the 3rd Judicial District of Iowa, the very northwest corner. Currently, the 3B has no representation on the Iowa Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court. Lastly, being a judge is not merely a job for me. I consider it my passion. And while I've certainly checked the boxes for diversity, defense attorney, prosecutor, city attorney, private practitioner, district associate judge, and district court judge, I believe my work over the last 26 years reflects more than merely checking boxes. I have strong writing and research skills. I have a passion for the legal profession and would bring that commitment to the Iowa Court of Appeals. And it's for those reasons I'm asking for your nomination. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. We'll start the questions from Mr. Gray.
Thank you, Your Honor. Judge Schumacher, I was very pleased when we had our chance to sit down to learn so much about the juvenile justice system, which I know very little about. Can you tell us exactly what you did so much work in the juvenile area and how that would, your work on the Court of Appeals would be part of that?
Thank you, Commissioner Gray. A fairly large percentage of the work that comes before the Court of Appeals involves termination of parental rights cases. As indicated, I handled thousands of juvenile cases, not only as a private practitioner, As a prosecutor, I managed the juvenile docket in Crawford County, and then also was the lead judge for Woodbury County in juvenile matters. A lot of times in my practice, I would hear people say it's only juvenile work. And I don't think people that aren't in the juvenile arena don't know the complications or the specialties of juvenile work. It's very impactful work. There's certain language that's required in all juvenile orders, and almost all of those orders are appealed, almost automatic appeal because of the termination procedure, and I've done a lot of work in that area. I'm very proud of my appeal record on terminations, so I feel I bring that experience to the Iowa Court of Appeals. Additionally, Woodbury County has a large percentage of Indian child welfare cases. About 35% of the cases that came before me were Indian child welfare cases, federal or state, and that is somewhat of a specialty, that amount of cases. So I really have a good background in that area, and we bring that as well to the Court of Appeals.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Mr. Horbach?
I have no questions.
Ms. O'Brien?
Thank you. Judge, could you please talk a little bit more about your work in the Indian Child Welfare Act, applying it, and the different standards, and how we might see some of the effects of that in the Court of Appeals in the coming years?
Thank you. The biggest difference in the Indian Child Welfare Act, federal and state, comparing to state law, is the active efforts versus reasonable efforts, and also a huge difference in placement preferences under the Indian Child Welfare Act. Many times we have tribes intervene early on in the stages. Sometimes we don't see tribal intervention until termination. So those are all issues that need to be taken a really close look at. We were fortunate in Woodbury County to have a tribal liaison that worked with the Native American community and worked with the tribes. So I believe we've really established a good relationship between the state and the tribes in Woodbury County. It wasn't always that way. I believe we have a very good working relationship, primarily because of that outreach from the courts and the department.
Mr. Roberts?
Good morning.
Good morning.
You do come from the county just west of where I live, and certainly, you know, I recognize the geographical diversity that you would bring. Could you speak a little bit more about the area where you currently are working as a district court judge? I know that you know, one of your counties, Woodbury County, is probably the most populated, so you're in some fairly rural areas. How would that benefit you in serving on the Court of Appeals?
Thank you, Commissioner Roberts. Currently, right now, as a district court judge, I cover 6 counties. Woodbury County definitely is the most populous county, has a lot of filings. I also cover Sioux County, Plymouth County, Ida County, Monona County, and Crawford County, which are considered rural counties. And I believe that diversity is good for the Court of Appeals. While I practiced in a rural area, when I was appointed a district associate judge, I drove to Sioux City every day to work, sometimes 7 days a week. So I also have that experience in the urban areas as well as rural.
Ms.
Thank you.
Conover?
Following up on that issue of geographic diversity, what is the importance of that to the bar, of having that geographic diversity on our appellate courts?
I can speak to that, to the bar, and then I also think just to the citizens of Iowa. I think it's important for bar members to have representation and feel like they're being represented on the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court. As indicated right now, we have no representation in 3B. And with Sioux City being such a populous county, that's a large area not to have representation. So I think it is important for the bar to have that reflective of their geographic area, as well as citizens from that area to be able to see someone that lives in their community, is out in their community, that is part of the appellate courts. Thank you.
Mr. Bloom?
I have a note here. It's always dangerous that I put my words into your mouth, but I'm going to rephrase it. Could you express an opinion? We have several applicants who have spent their whole careers in government as government attorneys. So, in your mind, is it important if your clients have been internal as opposed to private attorneys who have clients that you have to earn their business, I guess, would be one aspect. But I don't know if that's a real great question, but I'd like your thoughts on that, if that makes a difference.
Thank you, Commissioner Bloom. I understand the question. I'm sure that each applicant brings certain qualifications to this commission. I do think it's important to have a diversified background and really have had clients that you're accountable to. I had clients for 20 years. I understand the difficulties in managing a law office, managing the business aspect of it, billable hours, payroll, accounts receivable. So I do think I bring that diversity to the Court of Appeals as well as a prosecution background. So I really have both of those areas, but I believe it's a benefit to have had clients that you are accountable to.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Goodman,
I'm going to pass for other commissioners to ask questions.
Ms. Diekman,
Say no questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Sinclair, Mr. Sukup,
No questions.
Mr. Bevel.
Judge, you referenced having the ears boxed. Having experienced that, I've learned some lessons. Have you had any experience where you got your ears boxed, that you learned something that would be of benefit if you got on the Court of Appeals?
You know, I think bringing the legal experience of 20 years of private practice, having worked with the bar, brings that experience, whether your ears are boxed or whether you felt victorious. Being the only female member of that bar at the time, I really felt like maybe sometimes I was treated like their little sisters, you know, that got their ears boxed. But I walked away every time with learning something, whether it was from just the way I handled a case or perhaps cross-examination. I walked away from every trial feeling like it was a mini CLE. So the more I was in trial, the more comfortable I became, and spent almost every day at the end of my practice in trial. Being a prosecutor and a private practitioner, I would be in trial literally every day. So I learned a lot in those 20 years, whether I felt like I lost or I won. So I'd bring that to the Court of Appeals.
Thank you.
Ms. Law?
You have the unique perspective of being both a prosecutor and a private practice attorney. What will that bring to the table for the Court of Appeals?
What I think that brings to the Court of Appeals is the knowledge and the details of each work, defense work and prosecution work, private practitioner work. I mean, as indicated, I felt like when I became on the bench, I had a level of trust from both sides of the bar, defense and prosecution, because no one was viewing me strictly as a prosecutor or strictly as a defense attorney. People were able to tell those clients, hey, this judge did defense work. She's not necessarily going to just always look at the state. So I think I bring that advantage to the Court of Appeals as well, just the knowledge of all walks of the profession. Thank you.
Mr. Diaz?
I was a little disappointed you didn't disclose where you went to law school.
Oh, we had this discussion. Mr. Diaz and I met on the day Creighton was playing, and unfortunately, that next game we didn't quite make it with TCU, but we're both Blue Jay fans.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Berger? Ms. Bowden?
Yes, thank you, Judge, for applying for this position. I've had the fortunate opportunity to appear before you. Your qualifications are outstanding. I know your work ethic is tremendous, and you drive in every day. What is it, an hour and a half drive?
When I was a district associate judge, I was driving 2 hours every day, 7 days a week. So my travel is a little bit different now because I'm a district court judge, so I could be some days going to Sioux County, which is 2 hours from my house, or perhaps Ida County, which is 12 miles. So I am used to the driving. The driving does not bother me. I'm not sure how judges made that work before AccuWeather, because I rely on that a lot on what route I'm going to take. If there's a blizzard coming from the north, I take a different route. If there's a snowstorm coming from the south, I take a different route. But I will say that I've made that work, and when I was appointed as a district associate judge, I knew the work that was going to be required, and I did not want to disappoint any other members of the bar or the judiciary. So I did not miss a single day, even though I was driving 2 hours every day despite the weather. So really a matter of planning and making it work.
Thank you. And one other thing, having appeared before you, you have a tremendous judicial temperament, even though I know it had to be frustrating for we as our clients and as attorneys were trying to obtain. How do you do it?
When I became a judge, I had the experience of watching judges for 20 years and certainly had really good mentors to look at. And what I learned from watching those mentors is the key was judicial temperament. No matter how angry the litigants were, particularly in family law cases, or how cantankerous the relationship between the attorneys might be, you can be the calming force by walking into the courtroom and assuring people everyone's going to get their opportunity to speak. I have found that once you start off that proceeding saying, people aren't going to interrupt, everyone's going to get their opportunity to talk, the level of antagonism goes down in the courtroom, just assuring that everyone's afforded their time to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Pearson?
No questions.
Well, we just ran out of time, so I really appreciate you coming down this morning, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.